Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Black Psych NP, where we cover all things nursing and psychiatry. And welcome to everybody. If you're new here, my name is Brianna. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner here in the wonderful state of Michigan. And today we are going to dive into one of the biggest questions I get all the time. And that is, how much do psychiatric nurse practitioners really make in 2025? Now, money talk always gets people curious, and let's be honest, it's one of the most important factors when deciding if this is the right career path for you. And in this video, I'm going to break down into 5 key things you need to know: the base salary range here in Michigan compared to the national average, the biggest factors that impact pay, how subspecialties can change your income, and differences between the states, as well as finally some of my top negotiating tips so that you can get paid what you're really worth. So let's get started. Point number one, let's talk about the base salary in Michigan versus the national average. So first, let's talk about base salary range. This is the number everyone wants to know right away. So here in Michigan, the average salary for a psychiatric nurse practitioner is around $145,000 a year, according to Indeed. But based off my personal experience, I would never, even as a new grad, settle for less than $150,000. So other sites show a little bit lower or higher. For example, Glassdoor reports on average of about 128,000, and ZipRecruiter puts it close to 123,000, with top earnings going up past 150,000 per year. But in the state of Michigan, even as a new grad, I would recommend not settling for less than $150,000 per year. Nationally, the average is usually a little bit higher, closer to $151,000 to $154,000 a year. So if you're here in Michigan, you might see slightly less than the national average, although I would not recommend you accept less than that. But it really depends on where you work and how you structure your career. And remember, these numbers are just base salaries. They don't always include things like bonuses, overtime, or telehealth hours, which can add up to a lot more. Point number two is factors that impact your pay. So now, point number two, what actually pushes your salary higher or lower? These are a few key things you need to consider. So the first thing is experience. Just like in any field, the more years you've been practicing, the more leverage you have when negotiating. Entry level PMHNPs may start closer to that lower range, while experienced NPs with 5, 10, or more years in the field can move up significantly. Next, let's talk about your specialty. But before we talk about that next point there, I think that it's crucial that even if you are entry level, one of the things that you can do is to use your clinical hours as work experience, because that still is legitimate work experience. Even though you were not getting paid for your clinical hours, that is still professional experience that can translate into work experience on your resume. So even though you may be at entry level, you still have relevant experience that can go toward the negotiating pay when you are applying for a new job. So keep that in mind. So when you're working on your resume as a new grad, make sure to put your clinical hour experience on your resume as work experience. Okay. Okay. So that's just something to consider. Next, thinking about specialties and subspecialties. We're already a specialty, we're in a specialty by being involved in being the expert in psychiatry, but having a subspecialty, a specialty within that specialty, is also something that's going to significantly affect your pay. So we'll talk more about this in the next section, but working with kids, adolescents, or patients with substance use disorder often comes with higher pay because there's a shortage of providers that will take to work with these populations. So there's not as many people who are willing to work with substance abuse clients or psychiatric, pediatric, and adolescents. So the more you can niche down, the more you can specialize, the higher your pay may be. So third, your education and certifications. So having a doctorate in nursing practice, a DNP, or additional board certifications may give you a bump up. Employers see that extra training as added value. And I just say may because having a DNP does not necessarily guarantee you more pay, but more so on the certifications. Like, let's say, for example, you were certified in pediatric psychiatry, like you took a course and then you sat for a board exam that gave you an additional credential specializing in pediatrics or substance use. That would probably be a bit more of a leveraging point than actually going back to get your doctorate's degree. But to each his own, but getting a doctor's degree at this point of time in history is not necessarily needed in order to make topper, in the top of our salaries, if that makes sense. But another factor is where you work. So hospital systems, correctional facilities, or high demand community centers might pay more compared to smaller outpatient clinics. Telepsychiatry can also be very lucrative, especially if you're flexible in your hours. So the higher demand community centers, like for example, nonprofit centers, they tend to pay a bit more because they're not in the business for profit. And those profits can be passed along to the people who do the work. So nonprofits are a great place to work. So like community mental health centers, for example, would be a good place to start. I would recommend that for sure. Okay. And finally, location within the state. So if you're working in Detroit versus rural Michigan town, you're going to see some differences. Sometimes rural areas actually pay more because they struggle to attract providers. Another thing to think about and to remember is that, for example, if you're working in Detroit, if you're in Michigan, this is for you. If you're working in Detroit or even in a bigger city to where it's like underserved communities, and you land a job in a nonprofit, community center, a nonprofit mental health center, then oftentimes those community centers will qualify you to have your loans paid back after working there for so many years. So if you think about it, that is actually an indirect raise to working in that particular place. Because let's say you have about $50,000 in loans and $100,000 in loans, and they are going to pay that off for you after committing to 2 years of service, then that essentially is increasing your income as well, on top of already having a bit more of a higher pay. So there's a lot of different things that you want to consider. So if you do see a underserved community like Detroit, or like what would be an underserved community, for example, like in California, Compton, for example. If then they have a community mental health center there, this is just for an example, you might want to look into the other perks that go into serving that community, since there are incentives for serving that type of place, those types of people. All right, so things to consider. Point number 3. Okay, so now we'll talk about the specialties and subspecialties. So point number 3 is all about specialty differences and subspecialties. One of the best way to increase your earning potential is by focusing on an area that is in high demand. And before I even move forward, the fact that you're even considering psychiatry is in high demand by itself. But once you really start to niche down, that's when the demand gets even more intense. So, for example, child and adolescent psychiatry is in huge need right now. And when I say huge, it's big. Parents are desperately searching for providers. And if you're willing to work with kids and teens, that can boost your value significantly. And one of the things to think about, especially because that's my specialty, when it comes to working with children and their families, on top of the fact that number one, we don't have many people in psychiatry, we don't have many people in adolescent and child psychiatry. Then to put it into another perspective, everybody is not meant to work with children. Some psychiatrists or psych nurse practitioners may want to work with kids and teens, but they don't have the personality. They don't have the flow of like how they do things. They may not mesh well. So that cuts down even more people that are going into, and that may be a good fit for that particular population, which puts you even more in demand. So kids and teens, if you genuinely love kids and you love psychiatry and you can see yourself helping kids and these families, then you are most definitely going to be in a higher demand and can demand from that perspective a bit of a higher salary because you know your worth. Okay. Substance use disorders are another area where you can stand out. So with the opioid epidemic, an ongoing mental health crisis, providers can manage both psychiatric needs and addiction treatment in high demand. And this is so very true. Opioid, the opioid epidemic and how that is managed is very much specialized. It's not something that you come across every day. And so that in itself is going to place you, if you do decide to specialize in substance use disorder, it's going to put you in a much higher demand because there's not many people who like treating substance use disorder clients because it's a very much of a different population and there's different things that you have to be comfortable with and different things that you have to deal with, to be quite honest. But if that's something that you're passionate about and that you love, you're going to be in such high demand. Yes, I'll just say you won't be looking for clients. They'll be looking for you, knocking down your door. Okay, so substance use. The next one is geriatric psychiatry, which is becoming more important as our population ages. Dementia care and mental health support for older adults are growing fields. If we think about our baby boomers, and our baby boomers are getting older, and also the way that we manage a geriatric client is going to be a much different way of treating just a general psychiatric client or a child. It's much, much different. There's different things that you have to take into consideration when prescribing a medication for an 80-year-old man or woman. And just that specialty in itself is, and having that specialized knowledge is very important. Okay, and then of course, telepsychiatry. So being able to see patients virtually not only adds flexibility, but can allow you to pick up extra income outside of your primary job. So if you are looking to start your own private practice and you wanted to see your clients primarily as telepsych, in a telepsych setting, that's something that you can consider and you can use that as extra income. So if you're looking for ways to maximize your salary, really consider a subspecialty. It makes you stand out and it gives you leverage and negotiating power. It really, really does. Okay, point number 4 is state differences and costs of living. So now let's zoom out for point number 4, state differences and cost of living. Like I mentioned earlier, here in Michigan, we're seeing average around $145,000 per year. But don't settle for less than 150, girl. Don't do it. But if you go to states like California, New York, or New Jersey, salaries go up well past 170 to 180,000 a year. Sounds amazing, right? But the trade-off is the cost of living. For example, $180,000 in New York City doesn't stretch nearly as far as $145,000 in Michigan. So when you're comparing salaries, always take cost of living into account. Another factor is state laws. Some states give nurse practitioners full practice authority, which can allow you to open your own practice and negotiate higher rates. But in other states, you may be more restricted, which can affect your earning potential. And yes, I can most definitely attest to that because Michigan, we are a restricted state. We require psychiatrists as a collaborating physician. We can't practice without having a collaborating physician. And so if you are able to open up your own practice with a collaborating physician, that just means that there's going to be a lot less of competition for you. So just because you work in a restricted state, don't let it stop you. Still do what your heart desires, what you feel is right for your career and for your life. But just know that, okay, if I open my practice, I might have to look around for a physician as a collaborating physician that I may be able to afford. And then that also just goes more into the importance of networking and keeping in contact with physicians that you come across and might know. Maybe there's a friendship there. Maybe y'all have something in common, or just asking them, do they know of any physicians that may be willing to be collaborators? But that just kind of speaks to the importance of networking. But still, even though you may be in a restricted state, don't let that stop you from living your dreams and even opening up your own practice if that's something you decide to do. So the bottom line here is, don't just look at the big flashy numbers. Think about where you're going to live, how much it costs to be there, and what the state laws allow you to do as a provider. Okay, tip number 5, negotiating tips to maximize pay. Finally, point number 5, negotiating tips. This is where you can really make a difference in your paycheck. The first tip is knowing your numbers. Go on Indeed, Glassdoor, ZipRecruiter, look at the current average for your state. If you walk into a job interview without that information, you're already at a disadvantage. Second, highlight your unique skills. So if you have experience with a subspecialty, like the ones we talked about earlier, like kids, substance use, or in telepsychiatry, make sure to emphasize that. Employers pay more for hard to fill roles, okay? Number 3, don't forget about extras and benefits. Maybe an employer won't go higher on base salary, but you can negotiate for things like sign-on bonuses, relocation assistance, continued education, or even extra PTO. Those add real value. But I'll be honest, if they are not going to meet you at your minimum salary, I wouldn't accept the job, because that means that job's not for you. Just because they can't meet you there doesn't mean that that's something that you should expect. And I would never go below my minimum. So having like a baseline floor and not accepting less, because we have to remember that we're all connected here. And so if my sister over here in Farmington Hills, Michigan, is accepting a job for $135,000, then that's going to accept the new grad that comes behind her, who now, since people are accepting those salaries, they'll start accepting other nurse practitioners, psych nurse practitioners, that same low salary. So keeping in mind that our salary is not just our salary, it's everyone's salary, and we have to have a baseline floor and not accept less than that. Do not accept less than your minimum. I don't care if it's negotiating a sign-on bonus or even extra no. Do not accept less. Do not accept less. Do not, because after you accept it, it is what it is, and it's affecting other people down the line, the nurse practitioners that come behind you. And we're all in this together. Another tip is don't undervalue yourself. In 2025, psych nurse practitioners are in high demand. You guys, we are still in high demand. Don't accept less than 150 per year. And if you're in a major market, your skills are valuable. Okay. Know your worth, know your worth, know your worth. I can't say that enough. We're in the middle of a mental health crisis. Okay. It is still a crisis. There's still not enough providers. And so this is something that we have to know. We are in the driver's seat of this. Okay. Don't accept less. Know your value, sis. Okay. So in closing, so to wrap this up, psychiatric nurse practitioners in 2025 are making anywhere between $120,000 to $170,000 a year, depending on the state, the setting, the specialty, and the experience. So here in Michigan, expect closer to about $150,000 as a starting pay, even as a new grad. But with subspecialties, negotiating skills, and the right job, you can definitely push that higher. So if you're thinking about becoming a psych nurse practitioner, know that the opportunities are still huge. The demand for mental health care isn't going anywhere. And this is a career that not only pays well, but allows you to make a real difference in people's lives. I'd love to hear from you. What's the pay like in your state or your setting? Drop a comment below, because that helps other people who are watching this video too. And no, I reply to every single last one of you guys' comments. I love it when you all comment. I love it when I see new subscribers. So if you like this video and I earned your subscription, please give me a new subscription and give me a thumbs up. It really means a lot to my little channel. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and share with another nurse or nurse practitioner student who's thinking about psych. Thanks so much for watching the Black Psych NP, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.